Brilliant. Welcome, everyone. Yet another interview. We're having a bit of a spate of interviews, but this one, I mean, the other one was really important as well. That was about your career, and jobs are really important. But this one, I'm even going to say a little bit more important because this is a super hot topic at the moment. It's not something that I talk about a lot, yet it's something that comes up in my space. And I don't talk about it a lot because I'm not a specialist. So Ali is. I'm going to get Ali to introduce herself, and then we're going to go straight into the subject of neurodivergence and what that actually means. So hopefully there'll be something in here for people that are listening. So Ali, welcome.
Hello, it's such a pleasure to be here this morning and chat with you. So yeah, I'm Ali. I'm a counsellor and coach. I'm based in London. And gosh, how did I get to where I am? It's a long story. And the areas that I specialize in now are around neurodivergence, so neuro-affirming counselling and coaching, and also helping people to change their drinking. And then the intersection between changing your drinking and neurodivergence and what the complications are around that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing, isn't it? For sure.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, because anywhere where neurodivergence starts to get involved in your life and impacting what you do, it's definitely a thing. And you have to start being a little bit more creative around how you might problem solve and what you might do differently and so on. It's really interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. So what is neurodivergence? How would you explain it?
Okay. So neurodivergence, if you were looking at like the kind of official definition out there on the web, so this is topdoctors.co.uk, it's a term that refers to the range of differences in individual brain function and behavioural traits that diverge from what's considered typical or neurotypical. So you've got neurotypical, which is essentially how most people are assumed to be, and then neurodivergence, which is how lots of people actually are. And within that neurodivergence umbrella, there's all kinds of identities and diagnoses and so on, with things like ADHD, autism, or DHD, which is where you have ADHD and autism happening in the same person. It also includes things like dyspraxia, which is also known as developmental coordination disorder. So that's something that affects the way you move your body, but it also affects kind of your cognition and your brain function as well. And things like dyslexia, PDA, pathological demand avoidance, rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD. So all kinds of things appear under this umbrella of neurodivergence. And it seems somehow a little bit weird that you've got just one thing, neurotypical, and then everything over here under this neurodivergence umbrella, where you have all these kind of intersecting traits, characteristics, identities, and then the potential for many of those falling under a number of different types of condition. I'm using the word condition, which is one of those kind of very medicalized ways of looking at things. So if you look at autism, for instance, as a condition, as diagnosed by a professional psychiatrist and so on, but you also have traits of autism that come under that umbrella. So some of those traits might also appear in ADHD, in ADHD. They might be also influenced by things from dyspraxia, your DCD and so on. So you can have a lot of kind of co-occurrence of traits under a bunch of different conditions that all exist under this neurodivergent umbrella.
It's very complex, isn't it, when you start digging into it?
Yeah, it is. It's really complex when you start digging into it. And I think being able to simplify it is one of the things that can be really helpful for people, because all right, so one condition, if you were looking at ADHD, for instance, it can have all of these different traits, all of these different characteristics that may or may not affect you. So it's really common for people with neurodivergence to talk about my neurodivergence. Mine consists of these things, rather than I'm ADHD, so therefore I could have any one of a number of things. And then to distill that down further is to look at the traits and the characteristics that you personally have as your neurodivergence, and then look at how they impact you and what you might be able to do differently. Because one of the most frustrating things about neurodivergence, and it really frustrates me, is that I can't get rid of it. I can't just take out my neurodivergent part, pop it on the shelf over there and go about my business. It comes everywhere with me. It impacts everything that I do, everything that I plan, the way that I am, the way that my office is set up here, everything. And other times it can be really great, because there are things and there are strengths in that come with some of the neurodivergences that I experience. But I don't sort of buy into the whole "these are my superpowers" thing, because that sounds really patronizing. I don't feel superpowered. I feel frustrated, irritated, and annoyed quite a lot of it. So I have to work out what those impacts on me are, and then what I can start to do about them. I can't change me. I can change how I might do different things under different circumstances, but I can never take out the neurodivergence and just pop it on the shelf and behave like I'm neurotypical, because I don't even know what that would look like or feel like, because I'm not.
Yeah. So does that mean that it's genetic then? Because when we talk about, as practitioners, as you know, we talk about change, don't we? And being able to change certain aspects of our behaviors. And there's all this research now that is even drilling down into what people thought were personality traits that are actually, no, they're not. They're behaviors, and they're things that we can actually change. So there's this whole thing now about neuroplasticity, which is really exciting. And as a practitioner, it's something I've seen for a long time. But the way you're describing it, it's like, is that then genetic? Because like you say, it's something about you that you live with. It's not something you can change.
In terms of like where it comes from chromosomally and like which parent and so on, I that's not my bag. I don't really go there, but it is inbuilt. It's the way your brain functions under kind of general conditions. So it might be something around executive function, which makes things like planning really hard. It might make things like organizing really hard. If you're looking at habit and routine, things that you can change. So those are the behavior change things around the neuroplasticity area. If your brain is wired into such a way that routine is the way that you really function, knowing what your boundaries and parameters are is really important to you, then you start to look at behavioral change through a different lens. Because what does work for me? How do I best go about my ways in the world? How can I change this? If you're looking at drinking, for instance, how can I change this thing that's causing me loads of problems? That means that I don't have to sacrifice who I am. I can't change the way my brain works. So if you're looking at genetics in that term, yes, it's hardwired. I can no more change that than I can stop the sun shining. That's not in my control. But where it starts to become in my control is if I can start getting down into more of the granularity around things that are affecting me, then I think you have a better chance of being able to do something different. Where neuroplasticity comes up against neurodivergence is not a question that I have an answer to. I could give you a really long answer that wouldn't get us any closer to a solution, but it's not going to help anybody.
I think you did answer it definitely very well then for me, I think, where you explained that, you know, understanding, which sort of brings me on to my next question for you, actually. So it's understanding you, what works for you, and then how that works in the context of behavior. So my next question, and you've sort of said it a little bit, is what does the neurodivergence mean for you?
Oh, I mean, I could go into detail about all the things that are frustrating, annoying, but actually give me a little bit of freedom and choice in other areas. But the way that I got to understand that was I had to really drill into what my neurodivergence means to me. So I've got a collection of different types. I've got a broad range of things that could affect me. And then I've got the things that actually do affect me and impact my life. The more I know about those things, the more I know about me, the better I get at being me. So the more that I understand how autism interacts with ADHD and leaves me with this kind of weird melting pot of really strong impulsivity to do something, but an absolute really strong need to have routine and kind of fixed structures. Those two things compete against one another an awful lot of the time and can leave me feeling really overwhelmed, frustrated. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do with my time. What's more important? What do I do? But the more I know about how these things impact me, the better I get at being me, managing them and living well. Because a lot of the time when you've got these kind of competing demands that are neurodivergence kind of fueled, then where do you go with them? What is it I'm supposed to be doing? Which way do I look? So it can be really helpful to try and distill all of that stuff down into these are my priority areas. These are the things that really get in my way. This is the thing that's stopping me doing this. So what can I do about it? And it's not so much about changing you. It's about changing things in your environment that allow you to be you. So the more you know, the better you get at being you.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that any drug use, including alcohol, interacts with that in a multitude of ways. And then when you it could have, that's that whole thing, isn't it, where we talk about drug setting, where it's like, okay, cannabis does this generally, but then when cannabis is consumed by different people, it may do this, and this, and actually everybody's different. Each drug will impact differently. So then when you stop using, did you feel like, oh God, starting from the beginning again, like, who am I?
Yeah, totally. And because when I stopped drinking, I kind of pared my life down to 6 basic functions. So there were 5 that I had to do, and then an extra slot for things that I might bring in, see how they work, and then kick out if they're a load of rubbish. But I didn't know that I was neurodivergent then. I had an idea around dyspraxia because an ex-girlfriend gave me a lay diagnosis in Sainsbury's car park once as I drove my trolley into a line of other trolleys. I was a bit annoyed about that. And it didn't really figure for a long time as to what that actually meant for me, because I just assumed it was coordination, clumsiness, forever bashing into things. What's this unexplained bruise, which was kind of a story of my drinking days anyway. But it wasn't until I removed the booze and I started to think, well, where's my super duper functioning? Where's my massive surge in brain power? Why am I not like these other people that quit 4 months ago and are having all these amazing benefits? And that's when I started to work out neurodivergence and just what the impacts on me were. So I was thinking about this recently, about my drinking days and how ADHD might have had an influence in that. And it's around this kind of task completion thing. So like, if you gave me a glass of wine, I'm like, okay, my job here is to now drink this glass of wine, which I found that I was really able to do. But if you give me another one, my job is then to drink that glass of wine. Putting it down was not an option because that's my glass of wine. I need to hold this in my hand. And as soon as it's in my hand, and the longer it's been in my hand, the easier it is to get it into my mouth. And I never really looked at it around like through that lens in particular. And there's things around routine involved in that as well. So give me a drink, then this is what I'm going to do with it. Give me a thing to do, I'm going to do it till the end, because that's the kind of the process that my brain will go there. I've got to, I'll go and do that. So it has all kinds of complicated like inputs into what you're doing. And until you start to pick it apart, then it's really hard to like see the wood for the trees. I'm like cliche-tastic, but if you don't really know what's going on, you take the drinking away, you're left in this kind of, or the substance, whatever it is, you're left in this sort of void where all the things that you used to do that filled up your time, gave you a sense of transition between home life, work life, and different points in the day, things that give you comfort, things that relieve stress. Take it away and you're left with a big hole. It can feel really raw. Now what the hell am I supposed to do with myself under these new circumstances? That's mind-boggling, I found.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's not uncommon. And I'm sure you see it, you know, for people to come to me. And it's one of the things that I say actually is, you know, if you're 3 months in drug and alcohol free and you're having a terrible time, please call me or someone else, you know, because actually let's see what's going on. It might be an easy fix. It might not be, but talking to an experienced practitioner, they'll at least be able to say, look, at the very least, I'd be able to say, there's definitely something going on there. Talk to Ali or talk to, you know, it's that. But and then, like you say, getting that support and learning about yourself can make such a massive difference.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I often say now that stopping putting alcohol in was just the first step. That part was like, don't do it, carry on not doing it. But then all the reasons why I was doing it was where the things that were coming up that were tripping me up came up. Those were the things that I actually needed to work on and find support around and ways to kind of do different so that I wasn't falling into those same traps.
Yeah, I love it. Brilliant. Okay. So if anybody's listening to you and they've got, and I hope I can think of a few people that I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going to make sure they see this, hear this.
Yeah.
If you've got light bulbs going off, then what's something that they can do that might help them, or just the next step really?
The next step, like if we're looking at changing drinking?
No, if there's somebody that has changed drinking, but it's just like sandpaper, and they're like, oh my God, like you said, people are talking about, I'm bouncing out of bed and my life is amazing and da da da, and it's like they're like, no, it's like sandpaper.
Where's my bouncing out of bed? When I got that bit. Oh yeah, I mean, reach out, find some support. It might be like people in support groups where you can talk about what's going on for you. It might be reaching out to a counsellor or coach, somebody like me who works in this area and has an idea of the broad range of possibilities, because I'm not going to know exactly what it's like for you. I know what it was like for me. I know what it's been like for others from my professional experience. And it might be that there's something else going on where kind of an area of your life is really interacting with this wanting to change or having changed and not reaching. I've got S Club 7 now. Reach for the stars going on in my head. But if you're not, was that not? Who's that?
No, S Club 7. I was just like, no, don't.
no, mustn't go there. But if it's not clicking into place, don't feel like it's to do with you, that you're wrong, that you're broken, that it's not possible, because it absolutely is. It might just mean that you need to outsource some of this to somebody else to say, look, what do you think about this? It might be a trusted friend, it might be a partner, it might be a professional like me, somebody who works in this area, who has that kind of like removal from your life and can be a little bit more objective about it, can help you spot the patterns that are going on, what's on repeat, what needs to be taken off repeat, what we can do about this stuff. There's a huge amount to be gained from finding that kind of support, because I know from my experience, there's only a certain amount that I can do. I'm limited by my own biases, by my own experiences, by my own like narrow, rigid ways of thinking, because I have like particular grooves that I get in and I know how to do that. I can stay in that groove. But if it requires doing something else and some kind of different kind of thought from here or there, it just is beyond my capability sometimes. And it takes somebody else to come in and go, have you thought about that? And it might be the most ridiculously easy solution ever, but I won't have come up with it simply because I can't. My brain's busy doing all of the things that it does and staying in its groove. It can be really, really helpful and enlightening to get that extra support from somebody that's not you.
Yeah, and I would add to that someone who is a specialist and knows what they're doing. So not only do you specialize in this area, you are a coach and a counselor. So you are a professional, you know, and have supervision, and you're committed to your personal development. I mean, I cannot stress that enough. You know, it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mind being corrected, as you know, that neurodivergence is a hot topic and people are talking about it. And, you know, people are ADHD coaches and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that's great if they know what they're doing. But it's super, like you say, it's super important. If, you know, if you're listening to this and something that Ali says resonates with you, you know, I highly recommend that you contact Ali and you have that conversation. She will do free consultations, but just to get that feedback, because it is complex and there are lots of options. Not always neurodivergence either. Sometimes it's trauma related, isn't it? There's all sorts of stuff potentially that could be going on. But Ali is more than qualified to be able to listen and give advice with no obligation. So it's super important. And please don't think for 1 minute that going back to the drugs and alcohol is the answer, because it's not. You're in it now. So let's push through. Are there any really good books or podcasts that you'd recommend if people are curious?
A really good book I've just picked up about autism at the moment is this one. It's Valerie Gauss, Living Well on the Spectrum. And it's very kind of workbook orientated. There's lots of things to fill in. And she asks lots of questions to help drill down into the nub of what's going on for you. This, I think, is current favourite new book. And there's another one, actually, I would really recommend. This one. It's by Sarah Hendricks, and it's Women and Girls on the Autism Spectrum. The reason that I'm talking about these in particular is because when you look at later life diagnosis and identification of both ADHD and autism, the reason why it's more common for people who were assigned female at birth, who are women, is that a lot of the characteristics and traits are very much aligned towards male people, towards young boys and so on. So it's really common for people to come to my age, midlife, and go, this isn't right, this isn't working for me. When you find out more about different presentations like ADHD, like autism in women, then so many light bulbs can come on. You get much more clarity about where you're going. So yeah, I think possibly favorite book that I'd like to recommend is Sarah Hendricks, Women and Girls on the Autism Spectrum, 2nd edition. That one's important.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Ali. I could listen to you forever. It's just the way you explain things. It makes perfect sense to me. It's just wonderful. Thank you for your time. I will make sure that I put in how to contact Ali, but what's the best way for people to contact you?
Oh, so I've got a website, alipress.uk, and if you go to Google and search Ali Press, you'll find my website. You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's where I do most of my here's things I wrote type outputs. They're also there on my website, on my blog. But yeah, those are the best ways. And then there are contact forms, and like you can DM me and stuff in LinkedIn, and then I will get back to you and we can start chatting about where you're at and where you might like to be and where I might be able to help you.
Lovely. Thank you for your time today, Ali.
Thank you, Steph. It's been a real pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.